Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We begin with opening statements. The chair is now recognized. 18 cities, 11 states, 3 counties, and the District of Columbia are sanctuary jurisdictions, accounting for 31% of the population in this country. 31% of the American people, almost 1/3 of the American people, live in a city, county, or state where the left-wing leadership tells local law enforcement not to work with federal law enforcement. Now, what does that mean in practice? Let's look at Abraham Gonzalez, who on September 20th, 2023, was arrested by Border Patrol for illegally entering the United States. And of course, the Biden administration released him into the country. 5 months later, February 26, 2024, Mr. Gonzalez is charged with assault. 2 weeks later, March 11, 2024, he's charged with felony motor vehicle theft, stole a car. And on March 20th, 2024, 9 days later, he's arrested by the Denver police and placed in the Denver Justice Center. 6 days later, March 22nd, 2024, ICE sends a detainer notice to the Denver Justice Center saying this: if you're going to release Mr. Gonzalez, can you give us a heads up? Can you let us know maybe 48 hours before you're going to release this guy so we can come apprehend him there at the jail? And remember, a detainer is a final order of removal from a court where this individual or this individual's committed some removable offense. But on February 28th, 2025, Abraham Gonzalez is released to the streets. In fact, we can put that up. I think you can see this. Released, we got the form from the Denver Justice Center. What kind of inmate was Mr. Gonzalez for those 345 days that he was in the Denver Justice Center? We have that too. Violent to the staff, keep separate. So this guy was so bad, you had to keep him away from other inmates. He'd already assaulted some staff member, but Denver released this guy to the streets and instead of turning him over to ICE agents who would have come to the jail and arrested him there. And of course, we all know what happens. When the officers did apprehend Mr. Gonzalez out on the street, he assaulted one of the officers. This is what happens when you have a sanctuary jurisdiction. Right now in Minnesota, there are 1,360 detainer notices for violent offenders. Governor Walz and others have released 470 criminal illegal aliens back to the streets. In New York State, it's 7,000. Nationwide, it's over 17,000 that we know of. Where a detainer was filed, since President Trump's been in office, over 17,000 times a detainer was filed, and those individuals were released to the streets instead of turned over to federal law enforcement. 17,864 times. Illegals who've been charged with the crime have been released to the streets, and thereby jeopardizing the safety of the public, the safety of law enforcement, and of course the migrant themselves. And frankly, helping create the environment that results in the tragic deaths like we saw with Miss Good and Mr. Preddy. A few years ago, Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders said this in response to the State of the Union address. She said, "The divide in America today is normal versus crazy." And it's true, because it's crazy not to have a border, which is what we had under the previous administration. It's crazy to abolish ICE, and it's crazy to release bad guys who are here illegally to the streets when with one phone call, federal law enforcement will come to the jail and pick them up. The mindset that says it's okay to release these guys is the same left-wing mindset that thinks it's okay to weaponize government against your political opponents. And that is exactly what we had in the previous Justice Department. The Biden-Harris Department of Justice called parents domestic terrorists. The Biden-Harris Justice Department used FBI SWAT teams to arrest pro-life advocates. The Biden-Harris DOJ targeted traditional Catholics. The Biden-Harris DOJ pressured social media companies to censor Americans, and the Biden-Harris Justice Department launched not one, but 2 investigations into President Trump, spending over $35 million to try to bring down their political opponent. To further this effort, They sought the phone records of over a dozen Republican members of Congress. Even the Democrats said this was wrong. They got bank records for scores of White House officials. They even paid at least one confidential human source $20,000 for information on President Trump. And of course, while doing all this, they couldn't tell us who planted the pipe bombs, who leaked the Dobbs opinion, and who put cocaine in the White House. But thank goodness the American people saw through it all. Americans were tired of being targeted for their beliefs, tired of the lawfare, tired of the rampant crime throughout this country, and that's why they overwhelmingly elected President Trump. And what a difference a year makes. What a difference a year makes. Under Attorney General Bondi, the DOJ has returned to its core missions, upholding the rule of law, going after the bad guys, and keeping Americans safe. The Trump Justice Department has restored the rule of law. Murders are down nationwide by 20%. In D.C., violent crime is down by 28%. The federal surge in D.C. resulted in 8,000 arrests, the seizure of 800 illegal guns, and the recovery of 16 missing kids. The Trump Justice Department apprehended a suspect in the pipe bomb investigation, and they've arrested 6 of the FBI's top 10 most wanted fugitives in just 1 year. Of course, they arrested narco-terrorist Nicolas Maduro, and they seized a record number of drugs flowing into this country. Trump Justice Department put an end to targeting Americans for their beliefs. Attorney General Bondi rescinded Attorney General Garland's anti-parent memorandum. Department of Justice ended the practices of using the FACE Act to target pro-life Americans. They've refused to tolerate attacks on places of worship and investigations of traditional Catholics that we saw in the previous administration. On her first day, Attorney General Bondi disbanded the Foreign Influence Task Force that was pressuring social media companies to censor Americans. And the Trump Justice Department has ended lawfare. Under Attorney General Bondi, along with Director Patel, they've worked to expose the political nature of Arctic Frost and the Jack Smith investigations. They've turned over hundreds of pages of documents to Congress, and that's why we know, for example, that Mr. Smith paid at least $20,000 to some confidential human source. That's why we know that Jack Smith knew it was unconstitutional to seek to toll records from members. But since the litigation risk was low, and because members would never find out about the subpoena until years later, they charged ahead and violated the Constitution. The Trump Justice Department has changed DOJ policy to require prosecutors to tell judges if NDOs relate to members of the separate and equal branch of government, the Congress. And to top it all off, the Trump Justice Department opened an investigation into the conspiracy behind the Russia collusion hoax. The Justice Department has put common sense ahead of politics. They sued to keep boys out of girls' sports. They secured deals with universities to stop race-based admissions and anti-Semitic practices. And after discovering rampant fraud in Minnesota, the Justice Department, under the leadership of Attorney General Bondi, has established a new National Fraud Division. In fact, I met with Colin McDonald, who will head that division, last week. I think he's going to do a great job. There's a lot of work to be done in that area, but I want to thank the Attorney General for her great work in the first year on the job, and I want to thank you for being here. With that, I would yield to the ranking member for an opening statement.
Thank you kindly, Mr. Chairman, and welcome, Attorney General Bondi. You've got the best lawyer's job in America because your mission is justice and your clients are the American people. But to promote justice for the people, you've got to listen to the victims, like the women seated behind you today. Those are just some of the hundreds of survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's global sex trafficking ring who are demanding that the truth be told and are demanding accountability for the abusers who trafficked and raped them. You still haven't met with these survivors. So with their permission, let me introduce to you the survivors and late survivors' family members who are present today. There's Teresa Helm, there's Jess Michaels, Laura Bloom McGee, Danny Bensky, Liz Stein, Marina Lacerda, Sky and Amanda Roberts, who are the family of the late Virginia Giuffre, Charlene Richard, and Lisa Phillips. Now, you're not showing a lot of interest in the victims, Madam Attorney General, whether it's Epstein's human trafficking ring or the homicidal governmental violence against citizens in Minneapolis. As Attorney General, you're siding with the perpetrators and you're ignoring the victims. That will be your legacy unless you act quickly to change course. You're running a massive Epstein cover-up right out of the Department of Justice.
You've been ordered by subpoena and by Congress to turn over 6 million documents, photographs, and videos in the Epstein files, but you've turned over only 3 million. You say you're not turning over the other 3 million because they're somehow duplicative, but we know that there are actual memos of victim statements in there, and you also took down the Department of Justice's prosecution memo from 2019. So it's clearly not all duplicative, but even if it were, why not release it? Just release all the duplicative stuff. In the half you did produce, you redacted the names of abusers, enablers, accomplices, and co-conspirators, apparently to spare them embarrassment and disgrace, which is the exact opposite of what the law ordered you to do. Even worse, you shockingly failed to redact many of the victims' names, which is what you were ordered to do by Congress. Some of the victims had come forward publicly, but many had not. Many had kept their torment private, even from family and friends, but you published their names, their identities, their images on thousands of pages for the world to see. So you ignored the law, and even with over 100,000 employees at your disposal, you acted with some mixture of staggering incompetence, cold indifference, and jaded cruelty towards more than 1,000 victims raped, abused, and trafficked. This performance screams cover-up. Convicted sex trafficker and groomer Ghislaine Maxwell opened the gates of hell to Virginia Giuffre and hundreds of other victims, as Virginia recorded in her remarkable book, Nobody's Girl. But when Maxwell was subpoenaed to come testify before Congress, you and Todd Blanche quickly moved her from a higher security prison to a minimum security camp in Texas, where she's enjoyed 5-star treatment, including catered meals, private gym time, and access to a therapy puppy. All because Todd Blanche, who's utterly failed to investigate the monstrous crimes of Epstein and Maxwell's co-conspirators, spent 9 hours with Maxwell and satisfied himself that she would have nothing untoward to say about Donald Trump, which is your only real interest in the matter, based on institutional performance. But abandoning victims and coddling perpetrators is what you do best. When the FBI opened a criminal investigation into the brutal killing in Minneapolis of Renee Good, a poet and 37-year-old mother of 3, by Trump's masked paramilitary ICE agents, you shut it down. You claim you're investigating the cold-blooded murder of Alex Preddy, an ICU nurse at the VA. But how can we trust the administration when the president and Kristi Noem called Preddy a domestic terrorist and Stephen Miller called him a would-be assassin? Not only do you refuse to share evidence with the state and local investigators and prosecutors in Minnesota, you have blocked their access to the crime scene and the evidence. How are you seeking justice for Marimar Martinez, the Montessori school teacher in Chicago who was shot 5 times by a Border Patrol agent who bragged about it on text? Or the family of Keith Porter, a father of 2 shot and killed by an off-duty ICE agent in LA? Or the family of Silverio Villegas Gonzalez, shot and killed in Illinois minutes after he dropped his kids off at school? There's no sign of any movement at the Department of Justice. You even launched a criminal investigation into Renee Good's grieving widow. How sick is that? But it's even worse. You've turned the People's Department of Justice into Trump's instrument of revenge. Trump orders up prosecutions like pizza, and you deliver every time. He tells you to go after James Comey, Letitia James, Lisa Cook, and Jerome Powell, the head of the Federal Reserve Board, and members of Congress like Adam Schiff, Mark Kelly, Alyssa Slotkin, Chrissy Houlihan, Jason Crow, Chris Deluzio, and Maggie Goodlander, to name a few, and you snap to it. You replace real prosecutors with counterfeit stooges who robotically do the president's bidding. Nothing in American history comes close to this complete corruption of the justice function and contamination of federal law enforcement. And the good news is many serious lawyers at DOJ, including some of your own original appointees, have refused your lawless orders. Danielle Sassoon, Your original pick for acting U.S. Attorney in Manhattan resigned rather than follow your corrupt order to quash an indictment against Mayor Eric Adams as a political favor from Donald Trump. A Federalist Society member who clerked for Justice Scalia, U.S. Attorney Sassoon refused to participate in this blatantly corrupt scheme. Her top assistant, Hagan Scotton, an Iraqi war vet and two-time Bronze Star recipient who clerked for Chief Justice Roberts, and then Judge Kavanaugh, promptly resigned too, writing to your office, quote, "I expect you will eventually find someone who is enough of a fool or enough of a coward to file your motion, but it was never going to be me." You and the president nominated Eric Siebert, a 15-year career prosecutor, to be your U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia. But after 5 months of investigating Letitia James and James Comey, he found no evidence to justify criminal charges. So you forced him out. You replaced him with Lindsay Halligan, Trump's personal lawyer from the Mar-a-Lago documents case, who had zero prosecutorial experience and no qualifications. And then you were humiliated when a federal judge found that this corrupt appointment was blatantly unlawful and threw out Halligan's indictments entirely. And grand juries of American citizens have repeatedly rejected your vendettas and baseless indictments brought by the hacks left at DOJ now, with 2 different grand juries in Virginia voting down indictments against Letitia James in a single week. And just yesterday, another grand jury shut down your vendetta factory by rejecting indictments against the 6 members of Congress who had spoken out to remind all service members that they have a duty to refuse illegal orders. You tried to get a grand jury to indict 6 members of Congress who are veterans of our armed forces on charges of seditious conspiracy simply for exercising their First Amendment rights. I hope you will heed the wisdom and the constitutional patriotism of those grand jurors and not try it again by doubling down on that humiliation. As your best lawyers are sacked for having participated in the January 6th case or just flee for the exits now, your new lawyers keep lying in court. In dozens of cases, they've been excoriated for lying to federal judges. Chief Judge Boasberg, right here in D.C., suggested your Department of Justice perpetrated a fraud on the court. Other judges found your statements to be, quote, inexplicably misleading, patently incredible, totally inconsistent, and so disingenuous that the court is left with little confidence that the government can be trusted to tell the truth about anything. Now, as ranking member, I asked the chairman to add a few extra rounds of questions today because we each have 5 hours of questions, not 5 minutes, but we're stuck with 5 minutes. That's clearly insufficient to give voice to America's victims and survivors and to demand answers about all the corruption and cover-ups that we see at DOJ right now. We've got just 1 round, so we ask you politely but firmly, Madam Attorney General, please do not waste 1 second of our precious time by evading questions, by changing the subject, or engaging in personal attacks against members of Congress. We saw your performance in the Senate, and we're not going to accept that. This isn't a game. In the Senate, you brought something with you called a burn book, a binder of smears to attack members personally for doing the people's work of oversight. Please set the burn book aside and answer our questions. And when you hear us reclaim our time, that means it's time for you to stop speaking. We only have 5 minutes, so when we reclaim our time, that means you stop. And if you don't, we will ask the chair to stop the clock and let you go on his time. The quality of justice in America depends on the character of our government. Please do your job and bring the Department of Justice back from the brink. The survivors seated behind you and the American people watching everywhere deserve a Department of Justice worthy of its name. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Without objection, all of the opening statements will be included in the record. We will now introduce today's witness. The Honorable Pamela J. Bondi has served as the Attorney General of the United States since February 5th, 2025. She previously served in the Office of the White House Counsel, 2 terms as the Florida Attorney General, and spent more than 18 years as a prosecutor. We welcome our witness and thank her for appearing today. We will begin by swearing you in. Would you please rise and raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief, so help you God?
I do.
Let the record show that the witness has answered in the affirmative. Thank you. You can be seated. And please know that your written testimony will be entered into the record in its entirety. Accordingly, we ask that you summarize your testimony. Madam Attorney General, you may begin.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Jordan, Ranking Member Raskin, and distinguished members of this committee. Thank you for hosting me here today. I'm grateful for the opportunity to answer your questions, highlight the work of our department, and discuss the most important topic of all, keeping the American people safe. A little over a year ago, I was sworn into office as the 87th Attorney General of the United States. I came into office with the goal of refocusing the Department of Justice on its core mission after years of bloated bureaucracy and political weaponization. The Department of Justice's core mission is to fight violent crime, protect the American people, and defend the rule of law above all else. While our work is never done, we have made tremendous progress to make America safe again. In 2025, we saw the lowest murder rate in 125 years. That's nothing short of historic. If you compare 25 to 24, here's what you'll find. The murder rate is down 21%, robbery down 23%, carjacking down 43%, gun assault down 22%, ag assault, burglary, could go on and on. Crime is declining. This did not happen by accident. The numbers tell an important yet straightforward story. President Trump has given us the resources, the support, and the leadership to protect the American people. President Trump's policies have saved lives. I cannot think of a policy outcome more important than protecting the lives of American citizens. Can you? This trend has been especially clear in Washington, D.C. and in Memphis. These are two iconic American cities that spent years in the grip of horrific violent crime. The Department of Justice surged law enforcement resources, and the results came quickly. Crime plummeted in both cities. And I want to make one point loud and clear. We achieved those results by working with Democratic mayors. Public safety does not have a party registration. When your constituents call 911, they don't ask for political views of the responding officer. They ask for help. I have federal agents in each and every one of your districts. They're here to help, and I am here to help. Many cities and states have worked with us and taken advantage of our federal support. Some have not. Meanwhile, a few elected officials have declared that they are, quote, at war with the federal government and encouraged widespread obstruction of law enforcement. This has resulted in avoidable clashes on the streets, as you've all seen. We've seen rioters storming a Christian church. Citizens and law enforcement officers have both been endangered by reckless rhetoric. We have made dozens of arrests in and around Minneapolis so far, and many of them could have been avoided by simple compliance with federal law. Of course, our efforts reach beyond our urban centers. We are striking crucial blows against terrorist organizations such as MS-13, TDA, the Sinaloa cartel, and Antifa. And as we sit here, I think you've seen the news this morning. The news is reporting that cartel drones are being shot down by our military. That's what we all should care about right now, protecting America. As we seek to dismantle these drug trafficking networks that poison Americans, in 2025, our DEA agents seized more than 47 million fentanyl pills and more than 9,800 total kilos of fentanyl. That represents 369 million potentially deadly doses that can kill Americans. Meanwhile, our attorneys are fighting for President Trump's agenda in courtrooms across this country. This administration has been sued 627 times. We fought through a nonstop flood of bad faith temporary restraining orders from liberal activist judges across this country. America has never seen this level of coordinated judicial opposition towards a presidential administration. It is not only an unlawful attack on the executive branch's authority, but a serious attack on the democratic process. In spite of this unprecedented judicial activism, we've attained 24 favorable rulings at the U.S. Supreme Court, their emergency docket, and even more to come. We've done so while ending the weaponization of the prior administration by dropping FACE Act prosecutions, exposing the Arctic frost scandal via congressional disclosure, thank you, Chairman, and restoring one tier of justice in this country. To address the Epstein files, more than 500 attorneys and reviewers spent thousands of hours painstakingly reviewing millions of pages to comply with Congress's law. We've released more than 3 million pages, including 180,000 images, all to the public, while doing our very best in the time frame allotted by the legislation to protect victims. And if you brought us a victim's name that was inadvertently released, we immediately redacted it. All members of Congress, as you know, are invited to visit DOJ to see for yourselves. I want to take a moment to acknowledge the Epstein survivors who are here today. I'm a career prosecutor, and despite what the ranking member said, I have spent my entire career fighting for victims, and I will continue to do so. I am deeply sorry for what any victim has been through, especially as a result of that monster. If you have any information to share with law enforcement about anyone who has hurt you or abused you, the FBI is waiting to hear from you. I want you to know that any accusations of criminal wrongdoing will be taken seriously and investigated. The Department of Justice is committed to holding criminals accountable to the fullest extent of the law. In 2025, the FBI arrested over 1,700 child predators, a 10% increase from 2024. We also located 2,700 victims of child exploitation and shut down 3.8 million dark web pedophile accounts. 3.8 million. So please, if you have information to share that needs to be investigated, contact the FBI. Today, I look forward to discussing further our shared obligation to protect the American people, uphold the rule of law, and keep this nation safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Attorney General. The chair we now proceed under the 5-minute rule. The chair recognizes the gentleman from California for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam General, thank you for your extensive remarks, particularly on your continued investigation of those responsible over the years in the Epstein debacle. Obviously, you have an amazingly full docket between civil rights, between criminal, between so-called white-collar crime, and doing so, as the chairman said, at a time in which both you and the president are under attack, and our ICE agents and FBI and others are under attack when they try to enforce the law. I personally want to apologize for those who would embolden, support, or even stand with those lawbreakers that sit on this and other daises here in Congress. My job generally is to talk about patents and trademarks as the chairman of that subcommittee. I'll forego that today because one of my other jobs is the creation and maintenance of Article 3 judges, and I work with the Chief Justice on that, and we're trying to expand the court.
But currently, there are only 677 district court judges. They have very full dockets as well. But you create a tremendous amount of judges, particularly immigration judges. You do so in order to save the court that, but adjudicate, as is requirement, each of those people who claim a right to be here in the United States. And that has been going on under Republican and Democratic administrations for years. What's unique about the Trump administration this time is that you and President Trump have managed to reduce the backlog of people seeking that for the first time in decades. You are getting ahead of that tremendous backlog that caused, for better or worse, the release of millions of people with little pieces of paper saying, come back later when we call you, and often to no avail when you call. So I want to congratulate you on that, because it's an accomplishment you might not take credit for, and the other side would never give you credit for. But I hope you can continue to do that and do more. And I say so for a reason, because much of this hearing will be about Minneapolis and other places in which the backlog of criminal aliens, including in my home state of California, people who have hurt other people, people who have victimized their communities, is extensive. And although the overall number through adjudication may be going on, because of places like my home state, California, you're unable to apprehend people that my sheriffs want apprehended. They desperately want to cooperate, and they're prohibited by law. It is this committee's opinion on this side of the aisle that, in fact, you should be given the ability to demand that participation, and that the release of a known criminal not be considered to be acceptable just because a state or city has declared itself a sanctuary. I want you to opine on just one thing that I think has been misunderstood. As I said earlier, you create and maintain those judges that adjudicate these cases. You also support so many that, in fact, have to make decisions as judges. Knowing that this limitation of so few Article III judges are there, please educate those who seem to miss the point that Article I judges, including bankruptcy judges, including immigration judges, including lots of people with the title appropriately judge, do in fact issue documents that look like, act like, and are normally accepted as warrants, as subpoenas, as demands for state officials to stand aside and allow the production of either an individual or documents. Because I think people are missing the point that these ICE retainers and detainers and so on, they act like they're nothing, when in fact, in the ordinary course, Madam General, you do in fact have Article I judges constantly putting those out, and they are respected normally.
Thank you, Congressman, for talking about all the great judges. And if I could add one thing to that, we are always recruiting and looking for judges. So please reach out to our office for these judges who are handling all these very important matters. We've even added some JAG officers as immigration judges.
Thank you.
And so we're continuing to do that, but we're always seeking qualified lawyers as well to be part of that. And thank you for highlighting that, Congressman.
Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentlelady from Washington is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Attorney General Bondi, right here. We are joined in this room by some of the thousands of survivors from Jeffrey Epstein's horrific sex trafficking ring. They have shown such incredible courage in speaking out, in demanding accountability to bring the predators and pedophiles to justice. The Epstein Files Transparency Act required your Department of Justice to disclose the perpetrators connected with Epstein's criminal activities and to redact the information of survivors to protect their identities. Let me show you what actually happened. First, In violation of the law, your department has shown a pattern of redacting the names of powerful predators. Here behind me is one example of an email from Epstein to a man whose name was redacted. The email reads, quote, "Where are you? Are you okay? I loved the torture video." Only after members of Congress demanded that we see the unredacted files did the world learn the name of this individual, Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem, the chairman and CEO of a company that had financial ties to President Trump's business and personal ties to Trump's advisor, Steve Bannon. Second, the survivors were not similarly protected, also in violation of the law. Here is another email titled Epstein Victim List. We have blurred the names of the survivors for their protection, but your Department of Justice initially released this list of 32 survivors' names with only one name redacted, along with numerous files that disclose not only the names, the emails, and the address of survivors, but also nude photographs and even the identities of Jane Does who had been protected for decades until your department released their names. Survivors are now telling us that their families are finding out for the first time that they were trafficked by Epstein. In their words, quote, "This release does not provide closure. It feels like a deliberate attempt to intimidate survivors, punish those who came forward, and reinforce the same culture of secrecy that allowed Epstein's crimes to continue for decades." To the survivors in the room, if you are willing, please stand. And if you are willing, please raise your hands if you have still not been able to meet with this Department of Justice. Please know for the record that every single survivor has raised their hand. Attorney General Bondi, you apologized to the survivors in your opening statement for what they went through at the hands of Jeffrey Epstein. Will you turn to them now and apologize for what your Department of Justice has put them through with the absolutely unacceptable release of the Epstein files and their information?
Congresswoman, you sat before, Merrick Garland sat in this chair twice.
Attorney General
Twice.
Bondi,
No, can I finish my answer?
No, I'm going to reclaim my time because I asked you a specific question
Attorney General
that I would
respond to your
like
question.
you to answer, which is, will you turn to the survivors? This is not about anybody that came before you. It is about you taking responsibility for your Department of Justice and the harm that it has done to the survivors who are standing right behind you and are waiting for you to turn to them and apologize for what your Department of Justice has done.
Members get to ask the questions, the witness gets to answer in the way they want to answer. The Attorney General can
That's
respond.
not accurate, Mr. Chairman.
Because she doesn't like the
my
answer.
time.
So,
Mr. Chairman,
why
I have asked
didn't she ask Merrick Garland this?
I am
Twice,
reclaiming
when
my
he sat in my
time, and when
chair.
I
will
reclaim my
continue to
time,
answer.
it is
Mr. Chairman, the
my
gentlelady's
time.
reclaimed
I'm
her
not going
time.
to get in the gutter for her theatrics.
The time belongs to the time belongs to the gentlelady. The gentlelady has 17 seconds.
Thank you. You're not going to answer this question, so let me just
Chairman,
say this.
I'll direct it to
what
you.
a massive
No, I'm
cover-up.
answering a
Mr.
question.
Chairman, will you restore her time? The witness is
I'm not
interrupted.
going to get in the gutter with this woman.
Stop the
She's
time
doing
and
theatrics.
let me have my
The
time.
gentlelady from Washington controls the time. The gentlelady has 17 seconds. You can proceed with your final
Thank you.
17 seconds.
What a massive cover-up this has been and continues to be. Donald Trump made the release of the Epstein files the center of his political campaign because he thought it would benefit him. Then you got into office, Attorney General, claimed to have a client list, only
Regular
to
order.
then say that there was no list. Your deputy, Todd Blanche, met alone with Elaine Maxwell and transferred her to a minimum security prison. And now you continue the cover-up. And I wish that you would turn around to the survivors who are standing right behind you and on a human level apologize.
Chair now recognizes the chair.
And what you have done.
The time of the gentlelady has expired. The gentlelady, you have no time to yield back. We appreciate that. We appreciate the thought. And I would argue the central issue in the last election, the presidential election, was securing the border. The gentleman from Arizona who knows something about securing the border is up for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Attorney General Bondi, for being here today. In 2022, Lafarge, which is a French cement company, pled guilty in U.S. federal court to participating in a criminal conspiracy with ISIS. That conspiracy contributed to the deaths of U.S. service members fighting in Syria during Operation Inherent Resolve. As part of the plea agreement, Lafarge was required to pay more than $775 million into DOJ's asset forfeiture fund. In February 2025, my colleagues and I sent you a letter urging the department to review the petitions for remission submitted by the families of those fallen service members, including several of my constituents. The previous administration ignored these victims and our requests and left their petitions unresolved. My question for you on this particular issue is if you're willing to work to ensure those families that their petitions will be reviewed and brought to a resolution.
Congressman, we are aware of that, and we're committed to doing everything we can to support the victims and work with you. Thank you for that question.
Yeah, appreciate your answer. And now let's go to something that is also pressing that I've been working on for years, and this is the FISA Section 702 and Arctic frost. In January 2025, you testified before the U.S. Senate and agreed with Senator Lee that, quote, anytime an American citizen's private communications are intercepted or stored, whether through incidental collection or otherwise, those communications should not be searched without some showing of probable cause. Close quote. You still hold that view today, I assume?
Yes.
And during the most recent FISA reauthorization, I offered an amendment to establish a clear warrant requirement for searches of Americans' data while preserving every publicly cited operational exception, including emergencies, defensive queries, cybersecurity threats. And my intent was to ensure the Department of Justice could continue to keep Americans safe while also ending warrantless searches of U.S. persons' data. Are there any additional circumstances or exceptions that you believe must be included to ensure DOJ can continue to operate effectively while still protecting American citizens' data and privacy?
Yeah, Congressman, we are committed to working with Congress to uncover weaponization and other misconduct by Jack Smith, by others, Arctic frost, everything that happened under the past administration. And we are committed to working with you on that. And we are working with Chairman Jordan, with the House Intel, with all of my fellow cabinet members on resolving that issue.
Well, thank you. And I'm glad you brought up Arctic frost, because Section 702 was used in the Arctic frost investigation.
It was.
And information derived was used by Special Counsel Jack Smith. And my question has always been, and no one's been able to answer this, is what was the legal predicate for using a foreign intelligence authority in the Arctic frost investigation? Have you been able to ascertain any legal predicate?
Congressman, what I can tell you today is that has been referred to my office. I can't discuss anything regarding that because it is very active and ongoing.
And you probably can't answer this one either, but I really want to know if Section 702 queries related to that matter involved members of Congress, which we know at some level it did, congressional staff, which we know at some level did. We've heard that journalists or other U.S. persons not suspecting of acting as foreign agents were also caught up in that. Can you answer that question and say whether queries did cover all those groups I just identified?
It is a very active pending investigation within my office. However, I believe many members of Congress have stated that their phones were part of Arctic frost. We are well aware of that, and We are taking this very seriously, and this is a very active investigation. And I would keep going and say, if any member of the Democrat Party, if any of them, if that had happened to them, we would take that just as serious as we do. And they should be jumping up and down, screaming, supporting you and what you want to do, because this should be a bipartisan issue.
Well, I hope it is a bipartisan issue. You know, I'll just leave with these last couple of questions, which I'm sure fall into the same investigation privilege. But that's this: how many such queries were actually conducted overall? This is outside Arctic Frost in the prior year by the FBI or other intelligence community. And particularly, we really need to know what were the legal standards applied? Did they use probable cause? Did they use reasonable articulable suspicion? Or did they have no individualized suspicion and just were gathering up information? And that's beyond the investigation with regarding Arctic Frost. I don't expect you to have that information today, but if you can help get that information so we can understand the extensive nature of this continued misuse of 702, it would be very particularly helpful.
And it was extensive. Yes, Congressman. Thank you.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
I have a UC, Mr. Chairman.
And that is the gentlelady from Texas.
I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record. El Paso airspace reopened after FAA quickly rescinds 10-day flights restriction. This was published by the Texas Tribune on February 11th, 2026. And it says it was because of an impasse with the DOD over the use of unmanned military aircraft and not triggered by Mexican cartel drones.
Without objection.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. I didn't hear back about the second round of questions. I assume that's not happening. I just want to be able to assure the members, certainly on my side, if not both sides.
That's not a point of order.
No, that every member will get 5 minutes with the witness. Will there be 5 minutes for each?
Yeah, you get 5 minutes. Yeah.
With the witness. Okay,
Yeah.
very good.
Yeah. Okay. And are you up next? Gentleman from New York is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I want to begin by acknowledging the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's horrific abuse who are in the room with us today. I want to thank all of you for your bravery in speaking out. And I want to say that you and the other survivors of these heinous crimes deserve better from this Department of Justice. In particular, it is shocking that the department did not redact the names of Epstein's victims, but it did redact the names of their abusers. I don't know whether this was done out of incompetence or whether it was deliberate and malicious. But either way, it is completely unacceptable. Even more troubling, the DOJ has failed to bring any of these perpetrators to justice. Instead, it has engaged in a relentless pursuit of Donald Trump's perceived enemies. I want to focus on just one example: the Attorney General of my home state of New York, Tish James. This DOJ has been hell-bent on securing an indictment against Ms. James for something, anything, simply because she held Donald Trump's companies accountable for years of financial fraud. And indeed, the department manufactured an investigation against her for alleged, quote, mortgage fraud. But the U.S. attorney leading the investigation, Eric Siebert, a Trump appointee, refused to bring charges against Ms. James because there was simply no evidence. Unfortunately, a prosecutor who refuses to do Trump's bidding has no place in this DOJ, so Mr. Siebert was forced out. Trump could not contain his fury that he expressed to you in a social media post addressed to you by name. I'm sure you've seen it. Quote, I fired him and there is a great case, he wrote to you about Mr. Siebert. Then we moved down. We can't delay any longer. It's killing our reputation and credibility. They impeached me twice and indicted me 5 times over nothing. Justice must be served now. And obviously, you followed that order. Lindsay Halligan, Trump's former defense lawyer who had never prosecuted a case in her life, was installed to replace Mr. Siebert, and it was clear that part of her mandate was to go after Ms. James. Halligan immediately sought an indictment, which a court dismissed because Halligan was illegally put into the role. But your department was undeterred, and not once, but twice, it tried to indict Attorney General James in separate courts. Both grand juries rejected you and refused to indict her. It is practically unheard of for a grand jury to refuse an indictment. In 2016, it happened in just 6 cases out of over 150,000 offenses. And you had it happen twice in the same week in 2 different courts. That must have been humiliating. And now there are reports you are continuing to investigate her. The amount of resources that have gone into targeting Attorney General James, months of investigations, multiple failed indictments, is astounding. Since your own prosecutors told you that there is not enough evidence to support a conviction, it's clear that you were going after her simply because she held President Trump accountable and he wants to punish her. And she is just one name on a long list of Trump political enemies that DOJ is reportedly targeting, from Jerome Powell and Lisa Cook at the Federal Reserve to James Comey, numerous Democratic members of Congress, John Brennan, Jack Smith, Democratic officials in Minnesota, Chris Krebs, Miles Taylors, and more. And those are just the ones we know about. In contrast to these politically motivated investigations, grasping at something they can charge their enemies with, we now have concrete evidence of disgusting criminality revealed in the Epstein files. So I really have just one question for you. How many of Epstein's co-conspirators have you indicted? How many perpetrators are you even investigating?
First, you showed it. I find it.
How many have you indicted?
Excuse me. I'm going to answer the question.
Answer my question.
No, I'm going to answer the question the way I want to answer the question.
No,
Your
you're going to answer
theatrics
the
are
question the
ridiculous.
way I asked it.
Chairman Jordan, I'm not going to get in the gutter with these people, but I'm going to answer the question.
How many have you indicted?
Again, the time belongs to
Reclaiming my time.
The time belongs.
I think it's very interesting.
Reclaiming my time.
I think it's very interesting.
You can
when
reclaim
he
your
talks
time.
about they
Reclaiming my time,
indicted,
Mr.
the
Chairman.
president said they indicted him twice.
Mr. Chairman, please
They
stop the
sure
clock and
did.
stop the clock and restore his time.
Okay, here we go with these
Committee will be in order.
theatrics.
The time belongs to
time
the
and
gentleman
roll back
from
the
New
clock,
York.
please.
We will give you a few more seconds. We will do that. But when
Reclaiming
you ask
my-
a question, the
The
witness
question
gets to
was-
answer. You may not like the answer, but she
Right.
gets to
The
answer.
question was, how many of Epstein's...
They don't like
Que-
the answer,
Reclaiming
Chairman,
my time.
because it's honest.
Reclaiming
So
my-
he asked a
Reclaiming my
4-minute
time.
question.
Restore 45
and
seconds to
I am
Mr. Nadler,
going
please,
to
Mr. Chairman.
Reclaiming my time.
Answer.
You can let her filibuster all day long, but not on our watch.
Reclaiming-
Not on our time. No way.
Reclaiming-
And I told you about that, Attorney General, before you started.
You don't tell me
Yeah, oh, I
anything,
did tell you because we
washed
saw
up
what you did in the
loser
Senate.
Lawyer, not even a lawyer.
Committee will be in order.
Time, and I should get back at least 45 seconds.
We will give you a few more seconds. I
Not a
said that
few more,
already.
45 seconds.
Okay, I'm timing right now, Mr. Nadler. Go
All
ahead.
right.
Reclaiming my time. The answer to my question, how many of Epstein's co-conspirators has she indicted, is 0. You have been the Attorney General for a whole year, and your DOJ fired the lead prosecutor of this case, sat on evidence this entire time, and claimed falsely last July that there were no more leads. It took an act of Congress for you to finally release part of the Epstein files, and when you did, you included personal information about the victims while protecting the names of abusers.
Time of the gentleman
None
has
of the perpetrators have
expired.
been brought to justice, but enormous resources
Time
have been
of the
dedicated to
gentleman has
pursuing Trump's
expired,
enemies.
and
It's
obviously
clear
there
that
was-
under your leadership, the Department of Justice
There
no
was
longer
no
works for
question
American
in there.
people. It works
Order
for
respond
Donald
to.
Trump. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back.
May I answer?
I think our next questioner, Madam Attorney General, is going to give you time to respond to
Thank you, Chairman.
all kinds of things. So we will turn to the gentleman from Texas for 5 minutes.
Ms. Bondi, you go right ahead. I'm over here. The time is yours.
Thank you. First, he brought up the president saying they indicted me twice. They sure did. They tried to impeach him twice. And you, Mr. Nadler, were one of the leads on the impeachment. I was on the other side. I lived that with you. During impeachment, you said the president conspired, sought foreign interference in the 2016 election. Robert Mueller found no evidence, none, of foreign interference in 2016. Have you apologized to President Trump? Have you apologized to President Trump, all of you who participated in those impeachment hearings against Donald Trump? You all should be apologizing. You sit here and you attack the president, and I am not going to have it. I'm not going to put up with it. You know, all they want to do, the American people need to know this. They are talking about Epstein today. This has been around since the Obama administration. This administration released over 3 million pages of documents, over 3 million, and Donald Trump signed that law to release all of those documents. He is the most transparent president in the nation's history. And none of them ask Merrick Garland over the last 4 years one word about Jeffrey Epstein. How ironic is that? You know why? Because Donald Trump, the Dow right now is over $50,000. I don't know why you're laughing. You're a great stock trader, as I hear, Raskin. The Dow is over 50,000 right now. The S&P at almost 7,000. And the NASDAQ smashing records. Americans' 401ks and retirement savings are booming. That's what we should be talking about. We should be talking about making Americans safe. We should be talking about, what does a Dow have to do with anything? That's what they just asked. Are you kidding?
Mr. Jordan, Mr. Jordan.
Committee will be in order.
Mr. Jordan, am I going to get an extra 45 seconds added to my time?
The committee will be in order. The time belongs to the gentleman from Texas. Ms. Bondi, the Attorney General can respond.
Thank you. The Dow has shattered 50,000 for the first time. This is crazy. They said it couldn't be done in 4 years, yet President Trump has done it in 1 year. National median rents have fallen to a 4-year low thanks to Donald Trump. That's why they want to focus on Epstein and our most transparent president in the nation's history. The murder rate, as I said, has plummeted to a 125-year low thanks to Donald Trump. For an unprecedented 9 straight months, there were 0 illegal border crossings at the southern border. That's what we should be focused on. All the great work that this president has done and will continue to do to keep America safe and to make Americans safe.
Thank you, Attorney General Bondi. I agree with you totally. I think you've done a fine job. I think that Democrats, in fact, should be apologizing to the Epstein victims for doing nothing during the 4 years that they were running the government. We did not hear about this, and it took you and President Trump to finally provide transparency and give answers to the American people, and I want to thank you for that. I want to thank you also for standing up for truth today and for fighting back against the theatrics and the time waste that you will endure over the next hour or two. I want to apologize on behalf of my colleagues on the left. They're not all that bad, but they've got to put on a show. And I'm sorry that you have to go through that. And I would like to yield the last, I'd say 40, even 40 is 80 seconds. The clock says 40, but I've got 80 seconds since I was so rudely interrupted, and I'll give all 80 seconds to Chairman Jordan.
And I would just yield to the Attorney General if she has anything to add.
I'm fine to continue. Thank you, Chairman.
All right, the chair now recognizes, the gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentlelady from California.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would note that Mr. Nadler's question has not yet been answered, but I want to start by asking that out of respect for the American public and the Epstein survivors, some of whom, of course, are here today, that we can have a transparent conversation and get the public the answers they deserve. I want to briefly direct your attention to 2 documents I'm hoping we will put up on the screen. In the first, an individual emails Jeffrey Epstein asking whether a woman identified as M was pro or civilian, and Epstein responds that she was a civilian, Russian, and fun. In the second email, Epstein writes to Steve Tisch about a Ukrainian girl, noting that she was, quote, a little freaked out by the age difference and stating that he would try to convince her not to return to Ukraine. He then instructs Mr. Tisch to call him, adding, I don't like records of these conversations. So I'd like to ask a straightforward question that really is either a yes or no answer. Do these emails constitute credible evidence, not proof, but credible evidence warning further investigation into whether Steve Tisch was involved in Epstein's criminal conduct? Do you think yes or no?
I'm not going to play a yes-no game with you, but I will answer the question to the best of my ability. As I said, we will look and investigate any case involving any victim. I'm not familiar. There were 3 million pages, of course. with that email. But of course, we will look into anything. The documents have been released, 3 million. The redacted versions, we left them open for all of you to come view. I believe you view them. If not, will you have some copies?
I'd like to.
But could I finish, please? I'm not being rude, please.
I only have 5 minutes.
No, yeah, and I only have 30 seconds based on your filibuster.
But you didn't give a yes or no
Gentlelady from
answer,
California.
so let me just go further. Director Patel testified in this committee room that there was no credible information indicating that Epstein trafficked victims to anyone else. And glancing at the documents, that proves that's not the case. In July, your department issued a memo stating that it had conducted an exhaustive review of the Epstein files and concluded that no additional individuals would be charged. So I did go over to the Department of Justice yesterday. I would note that 400 and all our 35 members are in the House, and there's 4 computers. So it would take many months to actually have the time. I only had a few hours. I think the transparency argument is really kind of a sham because it's not really possible.
Whoa. Did you have to wait to get a computer?
It is not possible to really go in. I did, however, see a U.S. attorney information for the Southern District of New York indicating that there were additional survivors and probable co-conspirators. Other members of Congress have uncovered likely co-conspirators whose names were blocked out. Now, the Epstein File Transparency Act, which all but one member of this House voted for and the president signed, requires the department to release everything except that it needs to be redacted to protect the victims or an ongoing prosecution, which apparently there is none from the testimony we have received. I am concerned that this act has not been fully complied with. When Director Patel came to the committee, he admitted that up to 1,000 FBI agents had gone through the files and redacted President Trump's name from them. And it's pretty clear that what has been transmitted from the FBI continues to redact President Trump's name, even though he is mentioned thousands of times in these files. So I think the credibility of the department in terms of complying with the act has been damaged. And I think the department's credibility has been damaged in other ways. I think we all saw the horrible video of American citizens being killed by ICE agents in Minneapolis. And I think how the department has handled these cases raises a lot of doubt about the department. State and local police in Minnesota got a court order to get access to the crime scene to be sure evidence would be properly preserved by federal agents. But they took the agents defied the court order, and in a departure from general policy, the DOJ is not collaborating with state and local law enforcement on these homicides. So I really think that is a disgraceful approach to the homicides of American citizens, and really does nothing to bring credit to your department. And Mr. Chairman, I would yield back.
Gentlelady yields back.
May I answer?
Attorney General can respond.
I find it interesting that she keeps going after President Trump, the greatest president in American history. And if they could maintain their composure, this isn't a circus, this is a hearing. I find it interesting she keeps going after Donald Trump. She doesn't say how much money she took from Reid Hoffman, did you?
None.
And nor did
Mr.
she
Chairman,
post
regular
anything.
order, please.
She
Regular
posted
order.
nothing on her X account, on her Twitter account during the Biden years.
Gentlelady.
Yet now,
there
all
was
of
no
a sudden,
question
she's
asked.
going after
Committee will be in
point of
order.
There was no
Committee will
question
be in
asked,
order.
Attorney General. She doesn't just get to speak.
Committee will be in order.
I have a point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Committee will be in order.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Gentlelady can state her point of order.
When a witness attacks,
Not a valid point of order. You got to state.
She hasn't completed her point of order yet.
Gotta
Please let her
cite-
speak, Mr. Chairman. Let's have some regular order here.
Regular order is you got to state the rule. And she
I am
didn't do it.
trying to make a point of order that the witness,
And what
without
rule are you referring to?